Welcome to the Money Manifestation Mastery podcast with your host, Lara Waldman, where we talk all things money. Big money, big purpose, big power. Waking up your wealth for heart-centered business owners and entrepreneurs. In today's episode, we are living with loneliness. I share my personal journey, my personal story with loneliness, and how I've used the Manifestation Mastery tools to work with loneliness, overcome it, and help you tap into Manifestation Mastery. I've got some incredibly powerful information to share with you, and I can't wait. So let's dive in. A few days ago, I had a morning where I felt deeply alone. I sunk into an old story of feeling very alone, unsupported, and it really didn't feel good. And I spent time being with my loneliness, feeling my loneliness, and using my tools and techniques to help me transform that space of loneliness into creative power, into manifestation mastery. And I wanted to share a bit about my personal journey with loneliness and my story around loneliness, and also how the manifestation mastery tools and techniques can support you with this. There is some incredibly powerful wisdom that lies within loneliness that I'd love to share with you today. So I was reflecting on my experience with loneliness, and I have felt lonely so many times in my life. This began when I became depressed around the age of 17, and I developed eating disorders, and I started to withdraw. I started to withdraw socially and retreat into myself. I was having an experience that I believe no one else could understand. I was hiding my shame, my sadness from other people, and I became lonelier and lonelier. But I didn't really connect to the feeling of loneliness at that point. I wasn't consciously aware that I was lonely, but because I had withdrawn socially, I was not connecting with others, and therefore I was alone in my emotions and in my lived experience. And then when I started on my healing journey, and waking up spiritually, connecting to my soul, my inner guidance system, and waking up my path, my purpose. From the age of 18, I experienced another type of loneliness. This was the loneliness of having this very rich spiritual life, this very profound experience when it came to the world of energy, that most people in my life didn't understand and couldn't connect with. So I was having this rich, deep, lived experience that was starting to transform my life in really extraordinary ways that I felt I couldn't share with other people, or they didn't understand, or they didn't believe in. So again, I was experiencing a lot of loneliness and isolation when it came to this beautiful, rich body of work that I was opening up to. Now, I could share it with other spiritual people or other people that were on the healing path, but when it came to family and a lot of friends, they just didn't get it. And I longed to share my gift with the world as I started to work with more clients and experience exceptional results with my clients, and also having profound healing experiences personally. I wanted to share it, but I found that people were very resistant or not open to this beautiful world of healing and soul-aligned living. And I was on a profound healing journey, reconnecting to past pain, really meeting the discomfort in my physical body, my emotional body, my mental body, and starting to unlock this rich world on the other side of that pain, what I call the pain portal to prosperity. And I was blown away. And I was deep in this space of love and connectedness. and really wanted to have that depth of experience with others. But I felt really alone in that work. And then came motherhood, which I absolutely adored. I found it exhausting, but it also brought me home to a whole other level of myself, finally feeling home in the world. It was a very healing journey for me becoming a mother. But I felt very alone as a mother. I felt alone. I felt unsupported. I was home full time with my girls. And even though I was with my children, I was missing that adult company. I did hang out with other mums, but I also felt very alone in my domestic life, feeling like I was carrying the whole home and all the domestic duties and the childcare on my shoulders. So I felt really alone in motherhood. And I thought, wow, I wonder how many mothers or parents are at home on their own with their kids feeling alone right now. This is crazy. Why are we living like this? And then there's been times of real loneliness in my relationship, in my marriage. For many years, not feeling met or understood. And my husband felt the same way. We had some really positive aspects of our relationship, but on a really deep, fundamental level, I didn't feel met. So that spiritual side didn't feel met. And that's a really hard feeling, to be in a relationship where you feel lonely or you feel alone. So I was surrounded by people, but felt lonely. I felt alone. I felt alone and unsupported. And then when I entered the world of business and entrepreneurship, I experienced the same feeling of loneliness, that most people in my life weren't running a business, they weren't entrepreneurs, they didn't understand. And this sense of having a lived experience that most people in my life didn't get. They didn't understand the stress, how triggering and challenging it is, how exciting it is, how it forces you to face every single aspect of yourself. I felt alone in my business journey as well. And then generally with certain friends and family, I found that most people didn't understand me. They didn't understand my spiritual life. They didn't understand my business life. They didn't understand my healing world. And I found that a big part of myself was hidden in a lot of my relationships and a lot of my experiences in life. So this loneliness has been with me for a long time. And I have a lot of data and evidence to back up just how alone in the universe I am. And I call this soul loneliness, this deep part of myself that feels separate from the world, that's been hiding, that feels unmet, unloved, unsafe, unsupported. And it's this deep place in myself. And yet, I've also learned to challenge this experience. Is this the truth? Or is this a story that is reinforcing itself? Is this a story that I'm manifesting as my lived experience? Am I experiencing loneliness because of a hardwired pattern or program within myself? What I found is that I was protecting a part of myself. I was hiding a part of myself. This part is very sensitive, but also very powerful. I would withdraw from anyone or any situation where there was a sniff of not feeling safe. I would hermit away. I would hide in shame and pain, and therefore reinforce this story, this experience of being alone in the world, because I would withdraw and I would hide, because essentially I didn't feel safe to be myself in the world. And even though this story feels so real, and I could play my little violin and feel very sorry for myself, I also know that these manifestation mastery tools, they work. And if I'm not enjoying one of my lived experiences, I can make a choice to do something about it. Sometimes it takes me a minute to remember to use the tools. I might wallow in loneliness for a while and feed into that story until I decide to change it, until I decide to shift it. One of the ways that I hack the system of old stories or patterns or programs or the lived experience that I'm currently living or experiencing is to tap into what I want, to tap into what I long for. So if I'm having the experience of loneliness and being unsupported and unmet, then what do I want? And this means going into vulnerability. This means going to meet that part that's been hiding, that's been in separation, and get to know that part of myself. And what I've found with some digging and diving into myself over time is that I found this longing for connection. This part of me longing for a depth of intimacy that is quite unusual in this world. I wanted intimacy on every level: intellectual intimacy, emotional intimacy, spiritual intimacy, and physical intimacy. This part of myself that has been experiencing loneliness wants to be fully received, fully met, and to feel safe to do so. She wants to be heard, listened to. She wants to be held in all of her big feelings. She wants to be honored for her gifts and her wisdom. She wants to heal past pain, past trauma, the separation between herself and life, and wants to come home to herself, so that I can be the full expression of myself, my soul, integrated and embodied, fully alive, fully here. So this is what I found, this is what I connected to, and I started to wake up this longing and desire for this deeper depth of intimacy and connection. And yet, when I go out into the world, I find that desire, that need is often unmet. So I had to be willing to face that story, face that experience, interrogate it. Is it true? Is it not true? And then take a risk, to take aligned action, to actually do something to meet my needs and meet my desires. To follow that heart, to follow that soul's wisdom and lean into life and face the unknown, which to that part that's been hiding feels very risky. So as you can imagine, this has been a slow step-by-step process with a lot of failure. My nervous system will go into freeze and flight on automatic. So I have to work to open up, to lean into life and take that risk to be vulnerable, to be open, to share myself. So this has been a slow and painful process with a lot of failure and continues to be so. But I have grown and evolved a lot on this level. And I know I'm not alone. There are so many people who are experiencing loneliness, and it breaks my heart. And it is becoming harder in some ways to connect with technology as it is, with how we're living our lives. But what's so interesting is that my soul and my heart is calling me to create spaces for connection. And more specifically, in-person connection. That's what I want and need, but I also know it's what we all want and need. But a connection where the heart and soul can also be included, where your vulnerable parts can also be welcome, where your immense power and great gifts are also welcome. And I've taken my pain, my loneliness, everything I've struggled with, and I've put it into my business. I've now built spaces and places, created tools and techniques to support you to overcome these challenges and obstacles. And that is an incredibly soothing and healing balm for me to know that I can take my pain and transform it, alchemize it, and put it into something that can help another person. That brings me a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. One thing I discovered is that when I have the feeling or experience of someone else not being able to fully receive me, I have learned that if a person isn't fully receiving themselves, holding their emotions, being with their loneliness, being with their pain, acknowledging their gifts, receiving all of themselves, the light and the shadow, it's really hard to fully receive another in an embodied way. So my body, my nervous system can feel if someone can fully receive me or not. And I find it quite a rare thing. But when it happens, when I feel received, it is so beautiful. When I feel safe to be myself, I light up. And then we have the most beautiful and joyful and fun connections. So when I'm fully received and someone else is fully receiving me and I'm fully receiving them, this is where we tap into joy and creativity, and life force energy increases, ideas are popping, there's more expansion. And then everyone gets to come to life. And this is my happiest place ever, when we can all be fully received and come to life and spread our joy and tap into our creativity and innovate, come up with great ideas, troubleshoot, and move forward together. This is my kind of heaven. And yet, for so long, I held myself back, waiting to be received, waiting to feel safe, waiting for permission. And I just kept waiting and waiting. That day never came. I had to give it to myself. I had to give it to myself first. I had to receive myself first. And I had to meet my loneliness. And it continues to blow my mind that when I do the inner work, the outer world shifts and changes around me. It's extraordinary. I see it most clearly in my marriage. My husband is meeting me and receiving me on a level that completely blows my mind. Our intimacy, our connection is heaven on earth to me now. It is a dream come true. But we have worked on that. I've had to work on myself. He's had to work on himself. We've had to work on coming together. It has not happened by accident. But I honestly can't believe it. It is literal heaven on earth to me. And what I finally started to see was that there was a part of myself that was shut off, that was disconnected, that wasn't allowing that love and support in. I was hiding. I was protecting. And that still is running in my nervous system that I continue to have to work on and I continue to have to hold. I still use a lot of discernment. It still takes me time to build trust, but I'm working it. I'm working with it. It's a work in progress. Some days I'm more open, some days I'm more closed. But what I noticed when I had that day of really deep soul loneliness, it was on the back of a very deep trauma trigger. And they go together, this wounded part of myself that believes she's alone in the universe, unheld, unmet, unloved, unsupported aspect of myself. And I needed to go meet her. So what I'd like to do is share the step-by-step process that I use to help transform this deep loneliness into a very powerful portal for manifestation and creation. It is illogical. It's living in the unconscious aspects of ourselves. And this is what my soul has shown me. This is what my pain has led me into. This is the gold, the buried treasure in the bottom of the barrel of the self. And this is why sometimes when you go into the pit, the dark night of the soul, the really hard times, this is often where we find the most gold. And why I always encourage you to go in and face it, to meet it, even though it feels really bad for a short period of time. It can unlock trapped energy, unlock potential, power. It's incredible. So the first step is to be with the feeling. To be with the feeling. So in this case, loneliness. To go and meet the loneliness, be with the loneliness. I think what most people do is they busy themselves so they don't have to feel, or they have all sorts of strategies to suppress their feelings. Maybe it's overeating, over drinking. being so busy you never have time to feel anything, for example. So I make conscious space to feel my feelings and to be with them, to meet that part of myself, to hold that part of myself. So at first it feels bad because I went and felt the loneliness, and I felt the sadness, I felt the loss, I felt the grief, and I went deep into it. I surrendered into the feelings and I went right in and down. And I found a part of myself who feels unmet, unloved, unsupported, unheard, unheld. And she longs to be heard and held and honored. She longs to come home. She longs to heal and to create, to be in the world. She was hiding. She was in a sad story, and I needed to go and meet her. I've met this part of myself many times before, but what I found is as I journey through life and I get challenged or triggered by setbacks or pain, it takes me into deeper and deeper levels of myself. So it's not the same thing. It's a familiar part of myself, but it's going deeper, into deeper roots within myself. It is calling me home, grounding me down, drawing me into life. That traumatized part that was in separation, was hiding, wasn't fully here, is being called into life on a new level. So I needed to go meet her, hold her, listen to her, love her back into life. And from there, I interrogated fact versus fiction. So I was aware I was in a story that I'm alone, that I'm so alone. And then I went and interrogated that story. Is that true? What are the facts? What's the data? And then I remembered I'd actually been to a really fun party the weekend before with lots of my friends. I had an amazing time. I was feeling incredibly full and incredibly grateful. There's so many things that are amazing in my life, but I could not feel it when I was deep in that story, in that wounded story. But I could feel that part of myself that was still not quite ready to move out of the story. So as I went into the loneliness, we started going deeper, deeper into the body, deeper into the belly, breathing into my pelvic floor and meeting where the wound was. And what I found in the body is the wound, it can live in different parts of the body, but in this case, it was around the base of my pelvic floor, my root chakra, my base chakra, the perineum. And there was this space where the unheld, unloved, unmet part of myself lived. And she was in the darkness. And what I realized as I sat with this space is that it was simply that. It was space. And I eventually sat in this space. And very quickly, that feeling of loneliness turned to peace. And that space was the space of the universe. That space was the space of creation, of nothingness and everything. It's like the space in the universe. And this is around the base. And what is so amazing about this, I was reminded of, is that this is the space of creation. We need space in order to create. And yet a part of our brains do not like this because it's the unknown and it's the unfamiliar. And that feels scary and risky and uncomfortable. So I breathed into that space of creation and was reminded that this is the birthplace of manifestation. And when you can sit in that space and be with it, essentially be with the loneliness, and then transform out of loneliness into space, into creation, and then start to connect to what it is that you want, this is when you start activating your manifestation mastery powers. So from there, I started to call in. What do I want? I want deeper levels of connection, deeper levels of intimacy. I want to be my full, authentic self in the world. No more hiding, showing up fully, calling in all that I want and need. But that requires vulnerability. So we need to bring down the armor, unhook from the story, be with the feelings, alchemize them, and then start to create this vortex of receiving by being in the space. It is extraordinary. And your brain is not going to know what's going on with this step. This is why we need space to feel and to do this powerful deep work. But it may not feel good. It may not feel good. And it can feel unfamiliar. It can feel scary. It can feel uncomfortable. But learning to hold what I lovingly call the void space of the in-between is where manifestation mastery begins. And it's important to release any time agenda that you have and allow the power, the magic, the consciousness of the universe and the consciousness of creation to work through you and for you. Because in order to receive what you want, in order to welcome it in, you need to create space. And we create space by releasing and letting go. So in order for me to receive what I want, I had to let go of the old story that I am alone and I'm unsupported. It may be true. There's lots of data and evidence to back it up, but it's also a story. And to let go of that story requires vulnerability. It requires risk, because I need to now go into a new experience, which can actually feel quite threatening, because I know the story of I'm alone. I don't know the story as well that I'm so well loved and supported. But that story stops me from seeing all the ways that I'm loved and supported, of feeling all the ways that I'm loved and supported, of experiencing all the ways that I'm loved and supported. And so as I went through this alchemy process, this transformational process, I could start to feel and see and know that I'm not alone. So once you reach this space, the void space of the in-between, it's time to wait, to watch, to witness the manifestation mastery unfold before your eyes, one step at a time. And you will need to listen to your soul, to your heart, to your inner guidance system, to your intuition, to take that aligned action as well. So once I did this process, I got a hit to reach out to a friend. So I reached out to a friend, and then we met up later that day, and it was so lovely. I could choose to remain alone, or I could choose to lean in, to reach out, to take a risk. So this process needs time, it needs patience. Sometimes you can quickly turn it around, and sometimes you can't. I think there's also value in being with loneliness as part of life, that it's also okay. And when I get out of the story, I actually love being alone. I love having my own time. It's a really important thing for me to have alone time. I do a lot of healing work, nervous system regulation work, transformation work. That's where I tap into my inner guidance and my soul's wisdom. There's a difference between loneliness and being alone. And for me, it's about making peace with being alone and then holding the parts that feel lonely and learning to meet those unmet needs. So how about you? Where are the places that you feel lonely or alone, unmet, unsupported? This is a big part of the manifestation mastery work. And I am so delighted to share with you that I have created a beautiful space for you to be heard, to be held, to be met, to be received fully in all that you are, where I take you through my manifestation mastery steps. You're well supported by a soulful, big-hearted community of transformational educators, leaders, business owners, professionals. We come together inside of my Living Abundance Mastermind program. And I'm delighted to let you know that this program is now available at a much more affordable price. I was actually guided to lower the price by 50%. I would never normally coach anyone to lower their pricing, but my guidance was very clear on this, And I am so happy. We've got the sales page ready. You can click the link below to find it. And I would love for you to join us if you're wanting a space to be well supported on this path, on this journey, to keep consciously creating in alignment with your heart, body, and soul, in your life, in your business, in your finances, focusing on whatever you want to manifest and create. This space is designed for you. So you can click the link within this podcast. You can go to my website. You can send me an email. I'm really happy to jump on a call with you and talk you through it. We would love for you to join us. So it is my heartfelt pleasure to share this beautiful space with you. This has been birthed from my loneliness, building what I needed that I didn't have. And now we have this incredible community worldwide, online, connecting on this depth together, creating extraordinary results, doing brave transformation work and healing work, and coming together to do this together. It is absolutely beautiful. And this was my vision 20 years ago, and it is here, ready and waiting for you. So there is no need to be alone on this path, in this work, anymore. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm delighted to connect with you. And I would love to know what's landing for you in today's conversation, living with loneliness. I'd love to know what you've received, what you've got out of it, what's popping for you. So I look forward to hearing from you very soon, and we'll be with you again next time.